Hey, how's it going, everybody? If you're new here, welcome in, and if you've been here before, you know what to do. Smash the like button on the way in. I'm Rollshambo, the connoisseur and collector of all things sharp and shiny, and today we've got a new one from Kansept. This is, of course, the Kansept Goblin XL, and thank you to Kansept for reaching out and sending this my way for review. This is actually a design from Marshall Noble, or Noble Knives, and I think he also owns Legion Knives. I'm not entirely sure on that last one, but Marshall Noble is a knife maker and knife designer who's been doing it since about 2002, which means he's got 23 years in the game. And if you check out his Instagram, you'll find he's got some really cool knives and really cool designs out there. I first was introduced to the Goblin in its original format, which is a small 5.5-inch mini knife. And it makes sense given that the Goblin gets its name from the U.S. Air Force XF Goblin, which was a small, compact, experimental fighter jet that packed quite a punch. And so that makes sense. But what I imagine happened was that Kansept took a look at the comment section on those knives and saw a lot of people saying the same thing, which was probably, that's cool, I just wish that it was bigger.
Oh, that's nasty.
Now, I can understand that because whenever I show a knife that is 7 inches or shorter, those are the comments that I get, and I see them frequently. So naturally, the progression is that Kansept will see those and say, you know what, let's go ahead and give the people what they asked for. And they delivered. This is an 8.5-inch overall length on this knife with CPM S35VN steel, and new to 2024 is this fully frag pattern titanium handle scale. They used to have a more of a smooth handle scale. They've done a couple different variations of this knife, but this one is definitely a full-size knife, over 8 inches long, and they also added in this frag pattern handle scales, which I really like. The blade itself is 3.5 inches long, and we've got a couple different deployment options here. Starting off with the front flipper. The front flipper has adequate jimping right there that also serves as a good choke up spot for your thumb in a regular saber type grip. And then, of course, something you cannot miss at all is this Gigantor deployment window, which also works well for reverse flicking, and of course you can thumb flick as well. It's not as good on the thumb flick just because that's a very wide hole right there, but you know what, it is what it is. Personally, I think the front flipper works well, and of course a reverse flick would definitely be my primary option anyways. It's a frame lock, and for that lockup, we're going to be looking at somewhere around 25 to 28%, which leads to absolutely no blade play on the lockup. That's locked up and locked out very nicely. To follow it up with more quality of life type things, let's see the blade centering. Blade centering is nice, and it is running on ceramic bearings, which means that the action is going to be nice and smooth. Quality of life is a check, 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 and check. As far as ergos are concerned, I can get a full 4-finger grip without choking up at all on this blade, and that's because you know what, we've got 5 inches of handle skill here. But if you do want to choke up, while it doesn't have a finger choil per se, you can move to this flat spot, put your thumb parallel on the spine of the blade, which is going to mean that you're having absolutely no issue getting nice controlled cuts. Now, could you reverse grip this? Sure, it's not really meant for that, so I'm not going to spend any amount of time talking about the reverse grip. This is a sheep's foot style blade, which means that this is not the one you want to be jabbing and stabbing with. You want something else if that's your primary focus, but it does have a blade which lends to some really slicey cutting. Let's go ahead and check it out, going through some cardboard. So I've got some scrap cardboard right here. Let's go ahead and see how it works. Yep. Yeah, this moves through the material with ease. And this is the factory edge, guys. I have not sharpened this. I have not stropped this, which is something that I usually recommend whenever you get a new factory made knife, because the factory edge bevels usually leave a lot to be desired. But in this case, cardboard, no problem. Now, with that being said, I do want to talk about a few things that I'm not a big fan of on this knife width. The first is going to be the way that the pocket clip interacts with these frag pattern titanium handle scales. And the reason why I believe that this is an issue is because We have a semi-stiff pocket clip. It's not the stiffest that I've run into, but it does put a really decent amount of retention on that clip, which is generally a good thing, except for when the rest of the handle scales act like a cheese grater in your pocket. The frag is going to stick on your pocket, and you may end up having to do one of those two-handed jobs where you hold the pocket and then put this in. It's not a smooth in and out with one-handed operation like I like to see with pocket clips. And in case you're wondering, typically when it comes to pocket clips, my ethos is that first, it must be functional. Secondly, it needs to work well with the ergos. And then lastly, it's nice if it also looks good. And in my opinion, they got 1 out of 3. And with the original design not having the frag pattern handle scales, it could have functioned a lot better initially as well. But because they moved to the frag pattern milling, it makes it very much a cheese grater in the pocket. So going in and out, I'm just going to tell you right now, this could very well wear your jeans down very quickly. The next is the lack of a single-sided captive pivot. This is a free-floating pivot, which means that if you go to unscrew one side, it's going to move the other. If you go to unscrew the other side, it's going to move the other. To really take this apart, you do in fact need 2 different T8 drivers. But if you want to take the rest of the knife apart, you also will need a T6 driver, because despite the fact that everything else on this knife got bigger, the hardware itself did not. That's right, it got 30% bigger and the hardware stayed T6 on the body screws. And that's not going to be a big deal for a ton of people. A lot of people say, you know what, as long as it's threaded right and it's going into metal, it should be fine. But I personally have never stripped a T8 screw. I have stripped many T6 screws, and that is why I have a strong preference for bigger hardware in general. So who is the Goblin XL for? I think that it's pretty clear, actually. If you want a very efficient cutting tool that is premium materials made by a company known for good fit and finish, here you go. The Goblin XL will do it, especially if you looked at the original Goblin and said, it's too small. This one is going to fit the bill for you. Personally, for me, I would have liked it more if it had been about 7.5 inches instead of 8.5 inches. I think an inch shorter between the handles and the knife would have been just perfect for me. But that is going to be a personal preference thing, because someone with XXL construction worker hands might very much disagree with that. And you know what? That is a-okay. I do think that this is a great knife for the money, because you get nice things. You get nice things like great cutting geometry. You get a reversed lock bar relief cutout. You get a 3D milled titanium backspacer and pocket clip. You get the design of someone who really cares about creating a quality product that will actually get work done. But now that I've said my piece, it's time to have that conversation in the comment section down below. What do you think of the Marshall Noble design of the Goblin? Or more importantly, what do you think of the Goblin XL? Is this one that you could see yourself picking up, or is it going to be a pass for you? By the way, if you watched this far and you haven't done so yet, please consider hitting subscribe. And if you want to watch more awesome knife and EDC content, go ahead and click on one of the videos that pops up next.